Hello ladies and gentlemen, what is going on? It is me, T7 Gaming here with a PS3 controller, PS4 controller, compare and contrast video. So without further ado, let's get it started. Get it? Oh, it's okay. First let's start with the PS3 controller, DualShock 3 as it's called. Has a nice shape, great for the 2008, and has a little bit of detail around the buttons, and also it's around the D-pad. It's a nice D-pad, classic, you know. We also have the start and select button, classic PlayStation, and then we have the 2008 new home button. The analog sticks are slightly curved, which, it was classic, but we'll talk about that later. It's a nice feel, nice texture, I like it, easy to push buttons. Alright, let's talk about the triggers now, L2 and R2. They're curved and not flush with the rest of the controller compared to on the PS4, and they're really hard to push, which makes it suck for velocity-sensitive racing games. Now let's talk about the front back. We have the R1, L1, and L2, R2 clearly labeled, which isn't really necessary, except for if you're a newbie. And then we have the lights, the USB port, and DualShock 6-axis clearly labeled, and whenever you turn on the lights by pushing the home buttons, it indicates what player you are if you were hooked up to a PS3, which I'm not. Then we have the USB port, which is slightly bigger than the one on PS4, so you can't cross-charge, and then we have DualShock and 6-axis labeled. Alright, now let's take a look at the back. It's a nice smooth back. Take note of the giant sign, which is useless. I don't like the amount of space that they gave us to hold the controller, which could have easily been fixed if they shifted the middle part up a little bit, which we will talk about later. It feels nice, but whenever I was younger, it didn't really matter. It felt really small, but now as I'm getting older, I realize that it's not enough, and it just slips and falls whenever your hands are greasy. Okay, now let's talk about the PS4 controller, DualShock 4 as they call it. It's a great controller, it feels nice in your hands. It's not very different from the PS3 controller other than the touchpad, which I just pointed out. Nice analog sticks, nice circular button pushing, no detail anymore, which is a lot nicer in my opinion, and it looks better even, except grease gets on it really quick. But now we have options button and share button instead of start and select. Share is a very useful button, so go ahead and check it out yourself. And we have the analog sticks that are now flush and indented a little bit, and they're easy to push just like on the PS3. Nice buttons on the D-pad and no detail like I mentioned earlier. And yeah. Alright, now let's talk about the sides. Triggers are a lot more curved and concave, and it feels better to push them, and it's a lot easier to push. I cannot stress that enough. And we have the buttons, very nice feel, and they're more flush, and they are very, very clicky. Same thing with the D-pad, a lot more clicky, and they probably wear down over time, but to me, I find that interesting. You can also touch the touchpad, like push it down, and that allows you to do some things. There's a speaker on the front, and we have a giant light on the front back. And that is kind of like the lights on the PS3, except this one shows a color. We have a USB that's smaller, so you can't cross-charge. And we have R1, R2, L1, L2, a lot more clearly stated. Then we have the back. The sign, a lot smaller than the big one that we had for the PS3. And we have the smooth gray texture on the back that, if you can see it, looks very, very, very good, and it adds better grip, so that whenever you're like intense gaming, you never want to drop it. It always is there. Now let's compare the two. First, the PS3 controller. Nice shape, like I mentioned. It's very small compared to the PS4 controller, and the detail. And I, looking back on the controller, do not like the detail compared to the PS4 controller, which does not have that at all. It's a lot smoother, and it feels better. You can see yourself, and it's all pretty, and it's nice. And the buttons are a lot easier to push down. And then we have the analog sticks that's indented compared to the PS3 that is not, and it's curved, like I showed you earlier. And then we have the start and select, which on the other hand on PS4, we have options and share. And then we also have the touchpad added in, which is a completely new thing. Then we have the headphone jack on the PS4, which I don't like because Xbox and the PS3 does not have that, which I absolutely adore. And then we have the USB lights and DualShock, which on the PS4 is a lot smaller in comparison. Everything's more clear and obvious. And I like that. And then on the PS3 controller, we have the triggers that are not curved, which bothers me, which on the PS4 they fixed, and it's a lot more comfortable. Once again, I cannot stress how comfortable it is to push those two buttons down on the PS4 controller. And then on the PS3 controller, like I said, they're harder to push. I applied the same amount of force, and it moved a lot less. And then on the back, the giant sign that I mentioned, I hate, but the smooth texture I like, except on the PS4, it's a smaller sign, and the texture makes it a better grip, which I like. So it's kind of a preference thing. But all in all, nothing beats the good old GameCube controller.